It is 6:45 and you're watching the Tennessee Valley This Morning on this Memorial Day, and we are so honored to have with us a very, very special guest. His name is Mr. George Allen, and he's got on his World War II hat, 1940 to 1945, and he is a World War II vet and a Pearl Harbor survivor. Good morning, George.
Good morning.
Good morning, George.
Good morning.
We are thrilled to have you with us today.
I'm glad you could have me today.
I guess so.
He says he's glad to be here today.
I guess so. Wow. It's a great honor to have veterans on the show, and we've got three of you today, and to help us to remind our viewing audience how much we owe to our veterans and the great price that so many paid for our freedom. And we just appreciate you being here today and appreciate your service to the country.
Well, thank you
we do.
very much.
Really appreciate everything you've done.
If you don't mind, share a little bit about your experience in World War II and what it was like in Pearl Harbor.
Very hot.
Very hot? Wow. They always tell me that Hawaii's beautiful and it never gets too hot or too cold, but it was hot, huh?
For about an hour and 5 minutes.
Oh, I see.
Just only
About an hour and 5 minutes it was hot.
Midday, right.
Well, I enlisted at 18.
Did you?
And I was shipped to Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
And after assigning me to barracks there, we went on to maneuvers. From the time we were there, we come off 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, November Thanksgiving Day. The first weekend I was on pass. The second week I was on KP duty.
KP duty, where is
So
that?
you were
Kitchen
enjoying the
place.
life in
Kitchen,
Hawaii.
okay.
KP duty in Hawaii.
It's
Yeah.
kitchen, okay.
So, of course, you had to report early, 4 o'clock in the morning, and we got our inside duties done. And the head the kitchen sergeant says, "Alan, there's a 100-pound bag of potatoes out by the side there on that building. I want you to go. We got to have them by 10 o'clock."
Oh my.
So I'm out there looking up, and up at Coley Pass, I look up, which is a big place, and I'm from Maine. I was born in Maine. And the geese from Canada go in and out of Canada, certain parts of the year. And there was a flight of something. It was actually 250 Jap bombers.
Oh my.
I was thinking they were the geese coming back
Oh
from
my
Canada.
goodness.
Oh.
And that was the Japanese.
Yeah, that was the Japanese.
Oh my goodness.
So you were, where were you in relation to the harbor? Were you actually on the
No,
base?
I was right across from Wheeler Field.
Okay.
But the Japanese sent in a lot of Zeros to keep all troops on the ground before the bombers came. And of course we were unlucky. We put all the planes in line, and so they had a very field day. As a matter of fact, there was only 3 planes that would fly when they had finished. There were 3 P-40s. That's one true thing about the picture, Pearl Harbor.
Right.
After that, we went on back out in the field and dug in guns, thinking they might come back, big guns, 240 millimeters on the hills. And then we were shipped to Australia. We were some of the first Americans to hit Australia.
Oh, I see.
And then we trained there and got the division all together on the guns and everything, right? And we went into New Guinea was our first stop. The Australians had went into Lae, and we went just above them. Then after that invasion, where we rested up and replaced guns and all that equipment, then we went in and took Dutch New Guinea, which is the top tip of New Guinea, leaving all the Japanese in the center. And of course, after we got in there, we were lucky there, like they were at Oahu, because we knocked out about 200 Jap planes on the ground. They were caught on the ground there by us.
Got them before they even got in the air, didn't you?
Yes, before they even got in the air. Then we trained, and I was in the next invasion was in Leyte, the first flight back to the Philippines. After the Leyte invasion, we went to Mindoro, and then from there we went to the Luzon invasion.
Now these places are all in the Pacific, is that right?
Yeah, I was all in the Southwest Pacific. I was in 6 invasions in the Pacific.
A lot of strategic battles took place.
Yeah, actually the Marines were on the islands right off us. That's where Guadalcanal was and everything. They weren't too far away, a few hundred miles. But,
Right.
but the Marines attacked that, and the Army was, and the Marines were, their home base to get back when they were done fighting was Melbourne, Australia, and ours was Brisbane, Australia, right outside of Brisbane, North End.
Yeah.
And then after serving there, those invasions. Well, I was on arrest. We were getting ready to go into Mindoro, which was the last invasion in the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
And they're getting ready to sign the battleship on the Pacific in the harbor up in Tokyo, the peace treaty. And I get discharged at the end of 45.
It was interesting, you said something to us before the show, and something about your time in the Army, you only slept in
Right.
bed for...
5 days, and they flew me down after it was after the Dutch New Guinea invasion. Because we'd been underground mostly, either in a foxhole or we didn't know what a bed was. Twice, I think, we had cots.
Oh.
And we had hammocks in New Guinea. And we had a typhoon in New Guinea, and the flood water would fill up all the foxholes, so that as long as you had 2 trees close enough to tie the hammock, you were all right. If not, you had to lay on the ground.
Oh, my. So
But that was all I had.
you were in 5 years.
5 years. Just under
And
5
out of
years.
5 years, you had one day a year for a bed.
Yeah.
That's what it averages out
Well,
to,
at that
yeah.
time, that 3 years and, 8 months, 12 days.
It averages
The rest
out.
of the time, of course, I was in barracks, or of course, we were on maneuvers in Oahu all the time.
Right.
I arrived there on August the 13th of 1941, after training in the States, had all my training in. And after they signed us a room, barracks, and assigned us to a company,
Right.
and then we went out in the field already because they knew something was going to happen.
Yeah.
But it was pretty close to it getting ready to happen.
Let's go back to Pearl Harbor for a minute, George.
Yeah, Pearl Harbor was
It
very
seemed to be, I mean, it was caught the military there by a total surprise, didn't it?
right.
They just were
right,
not
right,
expecting
yeah,
that.
it was.
And as I, if
We
I,
didn't even have. Most of us didn't even have. A lot of people didn't even have real guns over there.
oh,
We were in very bad condition. I'm afraid if the Japanese had 40 or 50,000 troops on the area, we really could be speaking Japanese in this country, and most people, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. But when I was in Washington, I was talking to some general and some newspaper article. I went to sit down. You know, they fed me very good up there, by the way, while I was up there. And this reporter was asking this general, is it true I heard it in San Diego or someplace? He says, there's only one man here that can tell you anything about that. And then he pointed to me, so he came down and talked to me. I said, well, really, in a sense, because we made several mistakes, because the Japanese made some beautiful mistakes too, because if they had troops there,
yeah.
they would have controlled then the whole Southwest Pacific up to San Francisco.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Because they had all the islands under control. Guam was the only one that was still a few troops on it, but they couldn't do nothing.
They were a major
See,
power.
Oahu was the biggest island with the Pacific Fleet
Right.
there, most of the Pacific Fleet,
Uh-huh.
and that was almost all gone.
Uh-huh.
That was almost all gone. If you ever saw, there's one true picture on what happened to Pearl Harbor, and that's Tora, Tora, Tora.
Uh-huh. I saw that.
That's actual filming from the Japanese side and from our side. So what you see is happening there.
It's real.
And 80% of the time, of the movie, yeah.
Yeah.
The only time it's not real is when you see American actors, you know,
Right.
in the scene.
But the footage of the war
The footage
itself
is, yes,
was
and
real.
of course they got the archives
Wow.
from Japan at the end of the war, see.
I may have
And
to
that was
rent
That was actual,
Tora,
yeah,
Tora,
yeah,
Tora.
Tora, Tora, yeah. There's a good 80%, perhaps a little more than that even, is the
That's
actual
incredible.
Actual footage.
footage, yeah. When you
So
see
you-
a bomb going off, that's the
need-
field bomb going off.
That's
You need to
real.
rent that movie sometime this week
Yeah.
or today and watch it in honor of
And
those who survived.
another picture that's true to fact is From Here to Eternity.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
The writer of that book was in the barracks next to me.
Uh-huh.
Really?
And it's almost true. When I saw Frank Sinatra going up to the Coli Pass, his punishment, I said, Frank, I was next to you, only I had my gas mask on. Our punishment was you wore your gas mask on.
Oh.
That was the beginning of waterboarding, because we used to have to release, you know, to let the sweat out.
Uh-huh.
If you missed too many push-ups, or if you know, were late getting back from pass or something. Yeah, they were,
That's
because they had to train us rough then because they didn't have much time when they do it. So it completely changed at the end of World War II, how they treated
Right.
the servicemen.
It, if I remember my history correctly about that World War II event in Pearl Harbor, I believe the ambassador from Japan was in Washington,
That's
D.C.
right.
at the very time, talking peace and peace treaties at the very time the
Well,
planes were in the air.
They were
Was
1
he
hour
doing
late.
that to distract, do you think?
I
No,
guess.
no, they were 1 hour late in decoding to go to Washington. They were supposed to have declared war on us 1 hour before
The actual attack.
the actual attack. And they didn't get that, they were there an hour late getting there, that's what it was. So the attack was already over.
Uh-huh.
But it started over there at 5 minutes of 8.
Mm-hmm.
And that was 5 minutes of 1 here, see, in America.
Yeah.
But no, there was several. Now, when we went back into Lady, most people don't realize this, if you can get into the history books, because when I see television and know it was on, because I was there at the time or something, and I see the deceptions.
Have you seen Pearl Harbor?
The Hollywoodization.
That's not. The only thing true about that movie is that there is 3 P-40s that will fly, you know.
Right.
And
the rest
and
of it is not
those
true.
3 young actors run to the ships.
That's right.
You
It's
know
more
that.
of a love story than
it's
anything
more of a
else.
yeah. That's about the only truth that's on that.
Leave it to Hollywood.
That's right.
But because the people, you know, like that. So.
Yeah. That's amazing.
But another one. Then after that is Midway. See, that was
Yes,
when we lost
Midway, yeah.
one of the 2 carriers that we had left.
And then somewhere, I'm not sure where it came in the sequence, but then Guadalcanal was a huge naval battle.
Right.
Oh yeah.
That was in the Pacific as well.
But getting back to the Philippines, when we went back there, why, it's funny because I met somebody here that's really a big hero that was born and raised around this area, Leonard Mantooth.
Yeah.
He was in my outfit, a battle group,
Really?
yes. And when MacArthur's coming ashore, he's on, if that's the ocean, he's on this side of the boat. Our group is on the other side of the boat.
Right.
MacArthur's
You were on the
walking-
same boat together?
Yeah. Oh yeah, we were in all the same fights and everything.
That's
up to
amazing.
Lady, and he didn't have to go to Lady because he had too many points already, you know.
Uh-huh.
And they wanted to ship him back. He said, "No, I want 1 battle," so he went to Lady.
Mm-hmm.
And then they shipped him back right after that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he joined in the Air Force to finish out his
I
term.
see. Yeah. The Mantooth name is very prominent in
Yeah,
Bradley
yeah.
County.
No, he was a nice guy.
Yeah.
He knew all about us because, see, when they broke up, when we started, see, we didn't have much troops.
Uh-huh.
See, they would tickle to get your list on. They pull you in. As a matter of fact, I had to eat 5 bananas to pass the weight.
To bulk up a little bit, is that right?
They wouldn't let me in, and because they wanted us so
That
bad.
is funny.
So the recruiting sergeants, which are always in post office at that time, you know.
Yeah.
Well, he said, "Here's 20 cents. Go up, Alan, and buy. If you really want it, I want to get
Conventional
in."
bananas,
Yeah,
then,
no,
right?
I
Oh,
come right
love it.
back. So I
That's
did.
amazing.
I still was only about 3/4 of a pound over. I think at that time you had to be 118 pounds. You know.
My
But anyway,
Well, George, we really appreciate you coming
It's a
in
pleasure
today.
talking to you,
yeah.
George.
We've got to take a break, I've just been told, but it's an honor to talk to you, and just want you to know that I personally appreciate your service to the
Thank you.
country and your
Yes.
sacrifice, and
Thank you.
I
Really
know that the
appreciate
people
you.
viewing do too. And we owe our military
Our freedom.
veterans a
Everything we
lot.
have.
a
well, you
lot.
know, actually, we lost about 25 to 2,600 men
Uh-huh.
and about 12 to 1,300, wounded
Yeah,
in that invasion.
yeah.
Which that's the first disaster America has had in in a war type thing. Next would be that
9/11.
9/11. Yeah.
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 Well, it's, as the president said at the time, President Roosevelt, it's a day that will live in infamy, and he was correct.
Yeah.
It certainly has,
will.
and it was a rallying call, and it kind of woke America up that we need to defend ourselves. I think we thought the ocean would save us, it's such a long distance, but it didn't.
Going quick into something though, on the Lady invasion, we hadn't get all our equipment to shore, and I believe it was Nimitz. He was in charge of the Navy.
Yeah.
Well, the Japanese have been giving out bad news too to foul us up. So they said the carriers are going to go, it was about 300 miles away from Lady, you know,
Right, right.
and so he takes all his fleet up and leaves just a few destroyers and 2 small aircraft carriers to protect us. Now, we just landed on the beach in Lady. We didn't have even all our equipment ashore. And we were lucky because one of the pilots on one of them small carriers spotted this fleet of Japs coming up the Lady Gulf, and I mean, it was most of their Navy.
Right.
Their battle wagons and cruisers and everything else, which they would come up to destroy us on the beaches, see? They could clean us out. And if they had, that top officer hadn't turned around because he gets scared when he seen this plane, and he did some damage, I guess, to a small ship, and the Navy turned right around. That saved us.
Oh my,
Right.
amazing.
Because
Wow.
he couldn't get back with the fleet. He was
Yeah.
too far up north.
Great
And that's
stories.
what saved you.
Yeah.
I could listen to him all day.
Yeah, George, thanks
wonderful,
so
George.
much. I'd like to have you back sometime and talk to you some more about your experiences, but we have to take a break. It's 7:01, and we've been talking to George Allen, Pearl Harbor survivor, World War II veteran, and we just so appreciate George being with us today.
Thank you very much.
We'll be back in just a moment. Please stay with us. More to come.
I can go up and sit. I can go up there and sit now.
We are back, and we're celebrating Memorial Day today, and we are honored to have 3 veterans from the U.S. military. We just talked to George Allen. My, what an interesting conversation that was, talking about the Pacific Theater and his survival at Pearl Harbor. We have with us now Bill Norwood, and
Bill.
Bill is obviously a veteran. You can see from his uniform there, still wearing the uniform. But it's different this time.
And his shoes are
his
so
shoes are
shiny, I can see my reflection in them. They look wonderful.
Joe said you can take the man out of the military, but you can't take the military out of the man.
That's right.
And his shoes are shine. They look good. Bill, it's good to have you with us today. You're a veteran of the Korean conflict.
Yes, sir.
I think they call it conflict, but it's
First
a
of
war.
all, I'd really like to thank you guys for inviting us.
Oh, it's an honor.
And spread the word out there.
Mm-hmm.
How important that Memorial Day really is.
It really is. We need to stop and remember.
Yes,
Right.
sir.
And just
More than just one day
Yeah.
a year.
more than just spending time on the lake or having a cookout, you need to remember. Find a veteran. I always say you should, anytime you find a veteran, you should thank them for their service to the
Yes.
country. And we do really thank you 3 gentlemen for what you've done for this country. And you paid a pretty high price yourself, Bill. You were a POW in Korea. I guess you were a prisoner of war of North Korea for
yes.
several years.
2.5 years,
2.5
as a
years.
matter of fact. But we were able to do our thing before this really happened. You know, people would say, "Oh, you were a POW. That must have been bad," and it was bad. But we had some trying times before we were taken prisoner. I served almost 6 months of duty before this happened, so we got a double whammy.
Oh, I see.
We really did.
Yeah. Now, where were you stationed? Walk us through your military service there, Bill.
Well, first of all, I joined the military at a very young age for the adventure, I thought,
It turned out to
and
be
for
more.
the monetary benefits as well. Our base pay was $75 a month.
Oh, you were getting rich.
Plus, we had good food. We had a place to stay, more clothes than I had ever seen. It was a good life, and I enjoyed that very much until later when the Korean War broke out. It started in June of 1950, and I actually didn't get there until September. So a lot had happened before I got there.
Yeah.
And we were able to survive until the end of April of 1951. And at that time, the North Koreans and the Chinese combined were making a push south, and there was doggone many of them. You couldn't
Yeah.
stop them. You could only slow them down. And we were doing what our leadership called a strategic withdrawal.
Yeah.
We called it a bug out. And we were in North Korea. We made it actually south below the 38th parallel before we were surrounded. And the few that were left, in fact, there were only two out of my group. And we were actually taken prisoner by the Chinese.
Oh, really?
Then turned over to the North Koreans. They didn't want anything to do with us, so they turned us back over to the Chinese, and it was sort of a back and forth.
You take them, no, you take them, no. Is that what they were doing?
Yeah.
So let me ask you, were the Chinese officially a part of the Korean conflict, or were they just trying to be in the shadows and support the North Koreans?
They were the main wheel in this. See, we were not sent over there to win a war. We were sent over there to put the North Koreans back where they came from, north of the 38th parallel.
Back to where they,
People say Korea, the first war that we lost. We didn't lose the war. We didn't go over there to win the war. We went over there to put them back where they came from, and we did that.
Yeah.
Then the Chinese came in full force. We had the North Koreans on their knees. And then the Chinese came in such large numbers that we couldn't, you couldn't stop them.
like you said, you could just slow them
stopped
down.
some
There's
of
so
them.
many of them.
But so actually, I was captured south of the 38th parallel. Now, of course, I never knew where I was at anyway. But then, see, they had no means of transportation. The few vehicles that they did have could not move because our planes would destroy them if they did.
Right.
So we were marched north, and we could not march during the daylight hours or even on the roadways because of our planes that had no way of knowing who we were.
Who was who, yeah.
Yeah. And so I was captured in April, and we marched until August, which some people say was 500 miles. I don't know. But we were, as I said, we couldn't march during the daylight hours or on the roadway. We had to, walk up those narrow, steep mountain trails in total darkness.
It's amazing.
Did they give you food and water while they were?
Very
making
little,
you march?
because they didn't have a whole lot themselves, really.
And with you all being prisoners,
And
then they wouldn't
well,
share what they had.
they didn't like us for some reason anyway. They were, but
So you marched for 4 months, and then you were held prisoner. Where were you when you were prisoner? What town?
we were just across the Yalu River, which separates China from North Korea.
Yeah.
Okay.
They
So
did
you were
that.
in China.
They did that for a purpose. If there was any attempt to rescue us, all they had to do was take us across the river, and then we're in China, and that's a no-no. So
Yeah.
So that was planned.
Oh,
They could just
yes,
move you right
yes.
across
So,
there, and they couldn't touch you.
there were transit camps along the way that we would stop over. And when you started from the transit camp, only those who could walk on their own were permitted to continue. And those that could not walk had to be left behind. And of course, you know what happened to them.
Sure. That's so sad.
But I was fortunate enough to be able to survive.
Yeah. And you came back home to the place where you were born and raised. I mean, you were born and raised right here in Southeast Tennessee, weren't you?
Yes, I was raised up in Polk County,
Oh,
my
beautiful, beautiful area.
homestead.
That's right,
Yeah.
beautiful area.
Beautiful, beautiful country.
Cherokee National Forest is up there, and great rivers. And
I
I imagine that looked good to you coming back home.
Oh, yes, yes, very much so. As I said, most of the guys that I was with didn't make it, but the one friend, we stayed together, and we still see each other once a year.
That's fantastic.
Oh, that's
even,
wonderful.
even yet today.
Yeah,
so
that's-
we're still
Those are bonds.
close.
we're still kicking.
I've heard that those are bonds that you make that you can't describe.
Right.
Right.
We have an association of the guys that were held together, and we've met for, I believe this will be our 36th year, somewhere across the country. And I look forward to that. That has been a great benefit to me.
Sure.
It has been a definite form of therapy.
Yeah.
Right.
To be able to talk to these guys, and
Yeah.
we can talk about things that I
You couldn't talk to
can't talk
anybody else
with you
about.
or
Yeah.
even my own family.
You have to have gone through it to
because
really
they-
be able to relate.
They would sympathize, but they wouldn't fully understand. They couldn't.
Right.
So a lot of mysteries have been solved by us meeting together, finding out that like they would come in and get a guy and take him out. We never seen him again.
Oh.
And then he shows up at our reunion, see.
Oh,
Yeah. So
That's
Wow.
amazing. That is amazing.
guys who were reported KIA and held as such, and they show up.
Wow.
So it has been a great form of therapy
I
for
would
me,
say
and I
so.
look forward to it.
so
Yeah.
friends that you thought had passed are indeed still alive, and,
Right.
and you get to see them. Well, that's
Wow.
wonderful.
What an experience. Indescribable. I mean, I hear you talk about it, but you're right. We can't fully understand what you
Well,
Right.
you know, being a prisoner of war is not a heroic act, and it's not something to be shameful for.
No.
But, you know, people don't seem to understand. And I've had guys tell me, I would never surrender. Well, they don't know, really, until
Yeah.
you're, and I guess there are people that, but to me, that is a wasted life.
Yeah.
If you have a chance to live another minute, 5 minutes,
Yeah.
a day,
Right.
or a
Yeah.
year,
And you've lived a
then,
very productive life since then.
then most people, you know, would take advantage of that.
Right.
So
It would.
it's like I'm not ashamed.
No.
I,
Well, we're proud of you. We
We're
really
very
are.
proud
And
of
we're
you.
honored to have you in our presence and on our show this morning. And I'd love to have you back. It's 7:17. We have to take a break. And we want to talk to Sid. And Sid is the adjutant for the American Legion here in Bradley County in Cleveland. We want to talk to him as well. And he is with the Vietnam era in the military. We're going to talk to
Right.
him. But Bill, we just appreciate you so much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you
And
for
you
having
and
me.
George, appreciate you coming by.
Thank you for what you do to
And we just
make
appreciate your
people aware
service.
of our special day
Yeah,
today.
appreciate your service to the country.
Yes, sir.
Back in just a moment, 7:18. What?